Josh Giddey reveals the exciting way the Chicago Bulls are trying to instill their new offensive philosophies with this team, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Plus, Buzelis says his goal is to win Rookie of the Year. And the question is he going to have the role big enough to be able to do that? We're going to talk about all that plus more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today. And I want to start off talking about Josh getting his comments in regards to how the Chicago Bulls are trying to instill this new offense in the quicker pace. Now, we've heard Billy Donovan for a long time, for the last couple of years, I should say, talk about really wanting to play a quicker pace, right? And it hasn't always worked out. The Bulls were pretty towards the bottom of the league when it came down to pace last year. But one of the hopes that the Chicago Bulls team has is that with the new young roster that they've built here, the new young pieces they've added to this roster, I think I should say, is that they're going to really be able to really implement that. And part of that comes down to having a player like Josh Giddey instead of DeMar DeRozan. Now, in no way am I saying that Josh Giddey is the player that DeMar DeRozan was. No. But having a player that's actually at your point guard position that can be able to pass and is a better playmaker than DeMar DeRozan as far as creating open shots for teammates, it can lead you to playing a quicker style. Now, Josh Giddey revealed how the Bulls are trying to get that done. He said this: "We started scrimmaging with a 14-second shot clock to emphasize the pace we want to play. Once it becomes a habit, this team's going to be pretty scary in the open court." Now, I'm not saying how much this is going to work, right? That will be told once the season starts. I'm in no way going to come here and say just because the Bulls have changed to start playing with the 14-second shot clock, it all of a sudden means that this offense is going to be so much more dynamic. But I do like the intentionality behind doing something like this to start to get the players in the right mindset. And if you're practicing with the 14-second shot clock, that makes those 24 seconds you're going to have at the next level once games actually start seem like a lot more time. So in no way do I think the Bulls are going to try to play like a 7 seconds or less offense or anything like that. And they're not playing run and gun. I want to keep emphasizing that because I've seen a lot of people in the comments and things like that, talk about it as if this Bulls team is going to be playing a run and gun style. No, they're playing more up tempo. Run and gun is more that you're running the run. Up tempo is that you're moving with a quicker pace, but it's how you create those opportunities to get up and down the court faster. And also in the half court, I've seen a lot of kind of discourse about, oh, well, what about when the Bulls get in the half court? You can still play more up tempo in the half court, but that comes with moving without the ball, slashing to the rim. You have to have a lot more motion in your offense. Now, that's something we haven't heard yet to come out of training camp for the Bulls. That's really the thing that I'm going to be looking for in the first preseason game is, are we running more off-ball actions for your players to kind of get them open? But it's not just in transition. Yes, transition is a large part of that, but it's not just in transition that it can make your offense more up-tempo. So, the Bulls playing with that 14-second shot clock, getting those things in way, that's going to be a really big thing for this team. And this can be a team that in the open court can be really dynamic. And make no mistake about it, the Bulls have their own defensive issues, and we'll get to talking about that here in a second, or they're projected to have their own defensive issues. But when you look at Josh Giddey, Coby White, Zach LaVine, when you have these three guys, right, and how they're able to move and get out and all start the break potentially as well, because they're all decent to really good positional rebounders, that's going to open something up. And with Zach LaVine and his ability to catch and shoot. So there's a lot of things to look at that. Then you add Ayo DeSumo off the bench, Buzelis, right? Those type of players, Jalen Smith, who we're going to talk about here next, and how he could be a really big part and indicator of how much is really changing for this Bulls team as well going into the next level. I look at these things and I say, hey, the Bulls they're using training camp what training camp is to be used for. And it's good to hear that Josh Giddey did some contact things yesterday. Josh Giddey emphasized again that if this was, for example, playoffs, he'd be playing. So there's no question if Josh Giddey's going to be playing by the start of the season. That's not a question. The question is that the Bulls are just trying to make sure that they give enough time to heal up. And I still don't, we haven't heard anything as far as preseason. Still got a couple of days before we got any announcements there. And yeah, it's going to be listen, the Bulls are really trying to change some things here with this offense, and they have the personnel really now that it just makes sense to do that with. We just have to see if it's going to be something that ends up working out for this team, if it helps these young pieces fit together, because with more shot opportunities, when you're moving more up-tempo, trying to get out in the open court a little bit more as well, those things are going to help even kind of some of the fit concerns that are there with Coby White and Josh Giddey as well, as they are looking to work over those things. So, for the second day of practice so far for the Bulls, for us to already have a player waived in Marcus Domas being waived, which is, you don't see a goal for him. Get him out of there. It is what it is. Those practice reps go to a player that you more so see on your roster. For Josh Giddey to have contact, for Lonzo Ball as well to have his second day of contact and his body responded well. And the key thing with Lonzo is they keep saying they're watching how his body responds to things. And so everything right now is looking up, and they're looking like the Bulls are going to have everybody healthy at the start of the season. And that's a really big thing for figuring out the dynamic, figuring out the balance, and really figuring out where this team is going to be. But practicing with a 14-second shot clock is one of the biggest indicators. We've heard some really good things out of training camp. Yesterday, it was that Billy Donovan turned over the defensive scheme. And, one thing that I didn't do a good job at in talking about that when I did it is that that's so far in preseason. Now, we don't know if Wes Unseld Jr. is going to have defensive play calling. That was more speculation on my part, is that if Billy Donovan is really going to turn that part up to him. But so far in training camp, those defensive scheming and things have been turned over to Wes Unseld Jr., which is really good. Instilling a 14-second shot clock to try to nail home that point and get everything in rhythm, kind of jumpstart the mentality that's needed to play more up-tempo style. The Bulls are really trying to change some things. Now, one of the things that with Billy Donovan and with players as well is that once you start facing some adversity, there's, of course, that natural inclination to go back to kind of things that you've done before. And so, it's really about making this new style a second nature, making this the basis of your thing. And, yeah, like I said, the key thing, and I think all this as well, is in the half court, and also not just in the half court, but the off-ball actions, right? And that's something that I don't know if we'll get reported on. It's not like these practices are recorded to the point where they're released to the public to where we can see those type of things. But I'm really interested to see how that off-ball action piece of this works, because if you get players like Zach LaVine, players like Patrick Williams, players like Modest Buzelis, players like Ayo Dosunmu, even Coby White, right, who has already talked about his off-ball game is the thing that he already sees really needs to grow for himself. If you add those players moving off-ball as well, with moving a more up-tempo style of naturally trying to get out in transition through rebound, perimeter defense, those type of things, this is going to be a fun offense. And that's something that really, since we acquired Josh Giddey, I've always thought we're going to play a more fun style of basketball. And keep in mind, Josh Giddey's been on teams in the OKC Thunder that have played a more up-tempo style at times, right? And so, again, I'm not expecting Josh Giddey to come in here and be the Steve Nash of this offense off the rip or anything like that. But for a player that's been on long playoff runs, right, with teams that have had tons of talent on it, Josh Giddey, especially with his he's like, I know that people are doubting Josh Giddey and you get the jokes and everything like that, but Josh Giddey is a high IQ basketball player. He just is, and you want guys like that, especially if they're going to be the ones running your offense. So that's what it all comes down to with this team. And yeah, let's hope that we are instilling the type of offense that is going to get the most out of the players that we have here, that's going to grow and develop these guys, and we'll see where that gets us in the long run. But, we got some hope there. Things are looking up as well for the Bulls on the injury front, and things like this training camp period is doing what it's supposed to do. And I've said it before. I want to be clear here. Training camp, you're supposed to hear all good things. If we were hearing things already like, oh yeah, Coby and Josh Giddey, this fit just isn't working, it'll be even more sign for concern, because this is the time where things are supposed to be primarily positive. You're hearing bad things right now. That's a big concern. But there's even been some really strong talk about Coby White and how he's come into training camp, right? We talked about on yesterday's and by the way, every day, guys, you'll probably get an episode from me around 5 Chicago time after training camp days to talk about what's come out about that day's practice, especially while we got media and stuff in there. But so far in this, that Coby White and the leadership is evident. And even Zach LaVine empowering Coby White to continue to be that leader, kind of in a way turning that over to Coby. Not to say that Zach LaVine was ever the vocal leader. We all know that's one of the knocks that's been there on Zach LaVine. He's more of a, I'm going to lead by my performance on the court, by hitting these big shots and things like that. But it seems like right now, everybody's kind of looking to Coby, looking to Io to be that leader so far in training camp. And to what it's worth, we heard that Coby White is in some of the best shape of his life. We talked about the growth of Patrick Williams and how much weight he's put on and being over 230 at this point, right? You can see the work that Zach LaVine's done. Io, Coby White not only physically is in the peak right now, but may mentally be at the highest point of his basketball career as well, where a lot of those things are all coming together for Coby White as well. And that's going to be something that helps this Bulls team as well. Everything needs to be built around figuring out, like I've said before, eliminating as many questions as you can. And Coby White is a big part of that. And I love hearing that the Bulls are right now, in a way, prioritizing Coby White and still putting him in a position where his skill sets use. And it seems like that ball handling, the Bulls are really working out how and when to play off ball for Coby, for Josh Giddey, those type of things. We've already heard the quote before about Josh Giddey wanting to becoming more impactful defender, more engaged on that side of the ball. And that's the type of sacrifice and mindset you're going to need from all these players. Because while we can talk about practicing with a 14-second shot clock, while we can talk about wanting to get up more up-tempo and things like that, part of that to get you there is you have to be more defensively sound to create some of those opportunities more naturally for you. And so let's hope that that continues to be the case, man, and that the Bulls are just instilling the right things, the right methodologies, and all these type of things in the offense in this training camp period. Now, one of the things as well that could really kind of push forward this new play style that the Bulls are trying to do is what happens at the center position. Now, I talked about it in the offseason. I was one of the first people to report that Jalen Smith was promised an opportunity to win the starting center role. And so Jalen Smith was interviewed, and he said this, right? He put an emphasis on the fact of what he brings to the Bulls is that running the floor, the defensive versatility when he comes down to it, and the role that he was promised and the promise of opportunity and fit. Now, in no way am I saying here that it should be assumed that Jalen Smith is going to be the starting center. I actually think when you look at some of the videos that we've seen so far, it looks like he's running with the second unit, which is with Lonzo Ball and Modest Buzelis. But Jalen Smith, regardless of if he starts or not, watch the minutes. I think that's the most important thing to be made here is that I do think Jalen Smith has a real chance to be the Bulls starting center. I honestly do think that. But even more so than that, I can see a world, which Andre Drummond never averaged more minutes than Nikola Vucevic. I can see a world because of fit that we may see Jalen Smith over the course of time, especially if he plays well, being a player that either wins the starting center role or ends up playing just as much, if not more minutes than Nikola Vucevic. Because what we're seeing the Bulls emphasize are all strengthened by what Jalen Smith brings to this team. Now, there's one to say, well, Haize, wouldn't then Nikola Vucevic, you're just trading that being in the starting lineup for the bench, which the bench is also a unit that's suited to move more up and down. And you're right. So in this, either way, I'm not saying that anything's like this perfect, seamless fit throughout the whole roster, but don't overlook Jalen Smith. It's not the same scenario as like a Javon Carter last year. I don't think it's the same thing. I think when you look at how the Bulls are trying to play, how they're trying to get up and down, how they're trying to do some of these things, a lot of that is strengthened by what Jalen Smith brings. He runs the floor way better than Nikola Vucevic is. He's been a better three-point shooter over the last couple of seasons than what Nikola Vucevic is. So even is at the trail man, his ability to pop out and show pop out and hit the three-point shot in either pick and pops or even in transition is a thing as well, as defenses are going to have to guard him out to that three-point line. Still don't want to see Jalen Smith take a whole bunch of threes. I want to be clear here. I don't want to see Jalen Smith take a whole bunch of threes, but I do want to see Jalen use that to complement what he's able to do in the interior. His length that he brings there, the ability to also switch. Nikola Vucevic ain't switching. Hell, that drop defense is basically the only thing that he can play. Jalen Smith would be having a much better ability to switch as well and play some out on that perimeter if he gets switched onto a defender out there. And I think that role, whatever Jalen Smith's role is to watch that. Because that really, as much as I've talked about Ayo Dosunmu really being the glue guy, especially for the 1, 2, and 3 with Zach, Giddey, and Coby White, kind of making that work in his minutes that he's out there on the court because he can play with any of those guys. Jalen Smith, not to say that he's a key to unlocking this, but he can make a whole lot of things that the Bulls are trying to implement a lot easier just by the nature of who he is. And again, this is a guy who came for opportunity. So a guy who's averaged 16 minutes per game for his NBA career, and when he's gotten more minutes, has actually produced pretty damn well. I think Jalen Smith not only came here for an opportunity, but and he was probably promised an opportunity. I think he's ready to run through that opportunity and to show, hey, this is what I can bring. If you give me this, this is what I can bring to this team, and just allow me to show you that I can do that. And we'll see if that ends up coming down for when it comes to Jalen. And I hope that he can, man. I've loved Jalen. Even when you look at it last year, he started 14 games. And in those 14 games, 22 minutes per game, 11 points he averaged, 7 rebounds, a block per game in that as well. Only 30% shooting from 3. Again, 14 games. He only took 3.3. That's not great at that, but also 53% from the field. And then when you pair that with any time he's really gotten over 20 minutes, Jalen Smith is a player that has tremendous, tremendous upside. And you just got to come down to the season prior to last year as well. 11 points per game as a starter, still 7 rebounds, a block, almost a steal per game on 46% shooting. Jalen Smith is a player that has shown over his NBA career, if you give him minutes, he can produce for you. But the key thing here, I think even more so than that, is to look at this and say, all right, is this play style going to be something that really fits Jalen's game? And if it does, how much does that help your overall team and the offenses you're trying to instill? And I think Jalen Smith is a guy who brings a lot of that, right? And so we'll see what happens there, man. Overall, too, I think you also have to look at and come to the realization as well that Vooch's time here may be coming to an end at some point. And so even if Jalen isn't the starting center this season or for the primary all of this season, it may be his. Now, we'll see what the Bulls do going forward with their roster, right? You got Adama Sanogo in the wings. Maybe they pick up somebody else going forward. And in no way am I necessarily saying that Jalen Smith should be the Bulls. Oh, he's their starter for the next 3 years. But I do think in what the Bulls are trying to do, that Jalen has that opportunity. Now, it comes down to him. And I think that's a big thing as well. How much does he produce? And as much as the theoreticals of what he can do with more minutes are there, he's going to have to prove that he can produce with more time in a higher role for him to really earn that. And we'll see what that brings for Jalen Smith. But let me know what you guys think. Is that when you hear the Bulls practicing with the 14-second shot clock, when you hear that the Bulls are trying to implement a more up-tempo offense, so they're trying to spread things out, attack the open court, let me know how you feel about that. And then also let me know how you feel about Jalen Smith and how he can help the Bulls in what they're trying to do there. Now, lastly, before we get up out of here today, I want to talk about comments from Buzelis when he talked about his goals. He set his goals for his rookie year very clear, saying this: I want to win championships. For this rookie season, I want to win Rookie of the Year. It's going to be on me. If I don't, it's all up to me. Whatever I do on the court, how consistent I am every day, and that will translate. Now, I get what he's saying here, and Buzelis, like I said, while he is a very cocky player, and he is a player that has a level of confidence that actually is kind of refreshing to see from a rookie, he has to back it up on the court. Now, it's not all up to him, because Billy Donovan has to, not only give him a role, not give him a role, but be willing to play him if he earns the role, but also put him in situations to where it maximizes his game. Now, the question is that will Buzelis have the type of role that can win him a Rookie of the Year? And the fact of the matter is nobody has ever won Rookie of the Year coming off the bench. It just hasn't happened. The closest that has come to it is Ben Gordon, former Chicago Bull, winning Sixth Man of the Year his rookie year. But that Rookie of the Year award went to Emeka Okafor, which it probably really should have went to Ben Gordon. I know that was also his teammate, but that was semantics. That was politics. Ben Gordon should have been the Rookie of the Year that year. But other than that, there's never been a player that is even that's won Rookie of the Year. It just hasn't been that. And so Buzelis, if he was to win Rookie of the Year, he'd be setting history. He'd be making history if that's the case. And I just don't know. I get what the Bulls are going through, and I get where we are as a team right now. But to me, personally, I just don't see him having the type of role to do that. Now, there are veterans ahead of him, right? And we know that Billy Donovan is the type of guy who I just don't see a world in which Billy Donovan does not play veterans or gives it over. And even if he were to play, younger players, you still got Julian Phillips, you still got Patrick Williams, you still got Jalen Smith, you still got a lot of players. I'd even say Chris Duarte. You got a lot of these players that are going to be ahead of Modest Buzelis as far as the minutes production. Now, if Modest brings it, then some things can maybe change there, right? But just overall, I just don't see it happening. I don't see him having the type of role that's needed to do it. You look at a player like Haize last year, who didn't start a lot of games for that Miami Heat team. He finished 4th in voting last year, right? So, and there's going to be a lot of rookies in this rookie class that are going to have a lot of opportunities to stat pad in a way because they're going to teams that they're going to have the green light basically. Now, to fight against that point, which you guys know I like to present everything, is that if any year you can see a rookie coming off the bench to do it, it'd be this type of draft where it was such a lack of separation and kind of the potential in a lot of these rookies that really anybody could do anything. And so maybe there's a case to be made that if Modest Buzelis has a role where he can average at least 20 to 22 minutes per game and he plays well enough in that, but then you have to look at, do the Bulls win? And Rookie of the Year doesn't always go to a team that wins. So, maybe that's a case there. But Buzelis would have to be so good, in my opinion, coming off the bench to win the Rookie of the Year award that I just don't know if I trust Billy Donovan to play him and put him in those positions. I think that's the bigger thing there. Not necessarily looking at just Modest Buzelis, because Modest Buzelis, I think, is going to be a player that his role and his performance grows every single year. I really do. I mean, every single month. I think the month-to-month production for Modest Buzelis is going to go up each month for him. But I just don't know if Billy Donovan is going to give him the opportunities. I look at Modest as being a player that he's going to have to thrive off what naturally comes to him. Getting out on transition, finishing on lobs, the highlight reel dunks, the blocks that he can do, right? I don't project him to be a really good on-ball defender in this first year, but he does have the makeup to be. I don't see him being able to take advantage of his passing and the point forward potential that he has, because I just think we're going to have so many guards that are handling the ball and running that offense that is going to be more off-ball actions for Modest Buzelis. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think Modest Buzelis has a legitimate chance to win Rookie of the Year this year for the Chicago Bulls? Let me know what you guys think on that down below. That's my time for today, guys. Make sure you're following the show at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.